There's no denying Cowboy football is in crisis mode, a catastrophe, a disaster, a dumpster fire, all applicable adjectives. But, and I can't believe I'm saying this, what if Mike Gundy isn't the real problem? And what if removing Mike Gundy right now would actually make things significantly worse?
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more, especially right now when new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 back in bonus bets to use all across the app. Make sure you go download the FanDuel app today to get started. Meanwhile, we get started in the Mike Gundy conversation, and I can wholeheartedly tell you that I came into this day with the plan of attack being why it would be beneficial to potentially move on from Mike Gundy midseason-esque. There was some rumblings over some conversations that happened over the weekend, and that Mike Gundy wasn't combative in these conversations. But then we come Monday, he has a press conference. He's still the head dude. It makes you wonder, okay, well, how long is this whole thing going to linger? And what we were going to discuss is the limitations by waiting. For example, if Alex Golesh is going to be a head coach at Florida, we kind of would like to beat Florida to the punch, something to that effect. But I had some conversations this morning that kind of changed the tone a little bit. And the conversations that I had throughout the weekend, but more or so this morning, was pretty galvanizing around Mike Gundy. Ironically enough, there's a decent chunk of players that are rallying behind Mike Gundy because they don't necessarily feel like that Mike Gundy is the problem. Mike Gundy is the culprit. In fact, some of them even said if Mike Gundy had it his way, we would have a different two deep. Or if Mike Gundy had it this way, this group of dudes would be performing more so than this group of dudes. So you're telling me that the head man, the man, the myth, the mullet himself, Mike Gundy, doesn't have total say? And if so, like, why is that happening? Well, part of it could be because of us. This could be partially on us. We asked for a heavy-duty staff. We asked for a makeover. We asked for him to take more of that CEO role. And evidently, that is somewhat happening. And evidently, the issue that you're seeing on the field is primarily because of some coaches bringing in some specific players and then deciding that those specific players are going to play over the players that maybe should be playing because they brought them in. And they need to be right about the acquisitional talent pieces that they brought in. There seems to be a rift in the locker room, so much so that before the game on Thursday morning, you know, whenever everybody has their breakfast, you could hear a pin drop. Before the UT Martin game, completely different story. It sounded like a high school cafeteria, right? There was talking and joking and laughing and throwing stuff at each other. Before the Tulsa game, there was none of that, right? You could just feel that the team has been at odds to some degree. And this is accentuated by the fact that, and there should be some people in the comments that can attest to this, because if you sat front row between the 45 and the 40 behind the Cowboys, you heard this. Some of our defensive players during the game talking crap about Zane Flores. Our own players saying things like, why is he still out there? Why don't you put one of us out there? We can throw the ball better than that, in front of fans, in front of coaches, in front of their teammates. Now, whenever things get to that level, you know you've got problems. So that group of players that was standing there saying all of that stuff about Zane Flores, I hope they don't play another single down the rest of the time that they're in Stillwater, America. I don't care if we lose every single game for the rest of the season. There is clearly a divide in the locker room, and it seems to be the loyal and true dudes who still would run through walls for Oklahoma State University. There's still a group of dudes who care more about the name on the front of the jersey than the name on the back of the jersey. There's still a group of dudes that are tied in to Mike Gundy, so much so that they're coming out and saying, you can't do this. You cannot fire him at midseason, because if you do that, things will get worse. And it's like, well, we just lost to Tulsa. Like, if rock bottom had a basement with a buddy in it, we're already there. According to some of the players that I trust, things would get significantly worse if Mike Gundy were to be let go midseason. As in, some of the favoritism that you're already seeing would get worse. Some of the locker dissension would get worse. And naturally, one of the things I said when somebody said to me, well, if you do that on top of some of the external issues you're going to have a mass exodus, and you're going to have a significant number of players leaving the program midseason, and we might not have enough people to fill the roster for the remainder of the season. And I said to a couple of fellas, well, isn't that a good thing? Like, clearly we've got some dudes that care more about NIL. How do I know that? Because in the locker room at halftime, we had some players that were walking up and leaving their little player group because some other players were talking about the jewelry they were going to buy on Saturday while we're losing to Tulsa at halftime. The things that are now coming out, and this is the downside, whenever you bring in a whole new transfer roster, we had this discussion. There has been times where it's been massively beneficial. Arizona State, Mel Tucker, Michigan State, Florida State a couple of seasons ago, just like we've also seen it go the other way. Florida State going 1-11 or whatever after going 13-0. So we've seen that this can go really, really, really good, and it can go really, really, really bad. I believed in Todd Grantham. I believed in this SEC defense and all of these SEC coaches that we were bringing in. I believed in the talent pool that we were bringing in. The problem is they believed some of it too much too. So much so that now you have dissension, and it seems to be there's some dudes that were here before the NIL got crazy. There were some guys who were part of the OG walk-on crew that have been here for a few years, that have seen things kind of morph into what it is now. They're riding with Mike Gundy. They're saying that maybe some things need to change at some point in time, and Oklahoma State does need to have a maturation process. But as it pertains to an interim coach or something to that effect right here, right now, that it would get worse. Why would it get worse? Because of those dudes, the loyal and true crew that still bleed orange, that still want to run through brick walls. They feel like that Mike Gundy is being ostracized by some of the other people on the staff. They feel like that Mike Gundy is actually being hung out to dry in this whole ordeal. They feel like that Mike Gundy doesn't have enough say, that Mike Gundy is kind of being pushed into this corner. And because of that, they're willing to stand toe-to-toe for Mike Gundy, at least for the remainder of this particular season. I found that mind-blowing. I genuinely thought that the common consensus would be, yeah, it's time to burn it all down and build it all back up. And there is a sentiment that is factual. The problem is you got to be careful about how you burn it down. Because if we did fire Mike Gundy tomorrow and we announced an interim coach tomorrow, you would see a mass exodus, right? That's normal whenever you get rid of a head coach, right? That's expected. People have like a 30-day window to get into the portal once the head coach is fired. But again, when I said, well, wouldn't that be a good thing to have some of these individuals that care more about their jewelry and more about the trucks they're going to go buy than they do in preparation? Wouldn't it be good for those dudes to leave Oklahoma State? And the answer I got resoundingly was no, because it's the ones of us who do care, who do bleed orange, who are loyal and true, who will run through brick walls. It's us that will be forced out. And then for the rest of the season, you'll be stuck with the players that do not give a crap about Ohio State. They laugh about cowboy culture. They're here for their money. They're here for their trucks. They're here for their shiny jewelry and their luggage. They're here for that. They're here for all that. That's the players that we would be stuck with. So the players that do care, that bleed this to the core, that feel like Mike Gundy is kind of getting screwed a little bit here, those are the dudes that you kind of need to rebuild a program. Are we in burn it down and build it all back up mode? Yes. Does that potentially mean that Mike Gundy has worn out his welcome as the head man on the sidelines? After you lose to Tulsa, it's hard to argue anything other than that. But whether it's just a handful, and that's what it is, just to put it into context, I'm only talking to a handful of dudes. So could this handful be different than 80, 85 other players? It's possible. But when it's so many players saying almost the exact same things, and some of them are in different position groups, some of them are different classes, some of them came in with different classes, when they collectively are saying pretty similar things and completely separate conversations, it leads me to believe that the sample size that I do get is good enough to know that we have problems. And then again, the guys bashing our own quarterback on the field during play next to coaches and their teammates with fans that could hear them, that's a problem. So we have problems. And there's no doubt this is a crisis. But I cannot tell you how surprised I was to hear multiple players say, this isn't a Gundy problem. If Gundy had more say, more control, things might be a little bit different. That's the biggest red flag to me in all of this. Do I think that it's beneficial for Oklahoma State to at least explore what a coach could do in this NIL era? Because we clearly did not do things the right way, sure. Was I all prepared to go over the list of coaches and what the ramifications could be if we waited too long to get those coaches? That was the plan today. But when multiple players are saying the same things and they're saying that it's not necessarily on Gundy, I mean, holistically, yes. From 2022 to right now, Mike Gundy did kind of, let things fester a little bit too much, and he let things get away from him a little bit too much, and he trusted people in positions that he should have micromanaged a little bit more. So from 2022 to now, there was some things that were left undone by Mike Gundy that did create the chaos that we have. But this particular season, this particular roster, these particular play calls, they don't seem to be a Mike Gundy problem. It seems to be that there is a group of dudes who love the NIL, who love the package that they have, and they love continuing to get that. And then there's another group of dudes that feel screwed and they feel slighted. They didn't come here for the NIL. They didn't come here for all of the extra fluffy stuff. They just came here to bang heads, be loyal and true, bleed orange, and play ball. But those particular dudes aren't getting to play really, because no matter what the grades are at practice, no matter what the film looks like at practice, if X or Y or Z coach brought in these few dudes, those few dudes are going to continuously play because that coach that brought them in is seeking validation. I don't know. But what I do know is there's a loyal and crew of dudes, loyal and true crew dudes that feel like Mike Gundy's getting railroaded here. And they think that if Mike Gundy were to be removed in the middle of the season, that it would actually make things way worse. We thought we were at rock bottom. We thought we were already in the basement. But what we cannot do is lose the guys that are willing to be program rebuilders. There's still several players on this roster who want to be a part of this, whether it's with Mike Gundy next season or not. But those, by and large, are likely the guys that are getting screwed the most in all this. And I must admit, I'm a little surprised that so many players are saying that this isn't a Gundy problem. There's other external factors that are forcing Gundy's hand or limiting Gundy's hand that is creating the problems. So I woke up with a list and why we should do it earlier rather than later. And now I'm singing a completely different tune. I would like to see Mike Gundy go Ricky Bobby style. Get your balls back, Ricky Bobby. Speaking of, we got to go a little old school here. We're going to talk about the game caps, right? If I asked a quick question for all you out there, if you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest game ever, what hat would you be wearing? For me, it's got to be the game hats. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage style fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. So when you use the code Locked On, all one word, you will get a vintage hat for $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com. That is thegamecaps.com to grab your team's classic bar or retro, circle, design, and use Locked On code for an exclusive discount. Because legends were the game. So do not miss out on your opportunity to be a legend in the game hat. Make sure that you have enough energy to get to all of the events. Caffeine is a flavor upgrade. If you look at it the right way, 5 Hour Energy is the way to look at it. They have tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What you're going to love most about the 5 Hour Energies is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take anywhere and get a boost almost anytime you need it. You're going to be eyeing the crazy flavors that they have because they have so many. It's going to be perfect for you to just try the next one so you can stack them up and you can get a full complement of everything they can provide for you. You're going to love how fast they kick in and the fact that it's sugar-free so you don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeines. It's time for you to take your caffeine flavor upgrade today with 5 Hour Energy Shot. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in the store or online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. That is 5hourenergy.com. Go there today. All right, now we get to slide into segment 2 here, which we're going to talk about the NIL killing Oklahoma State. And this is, I don't know, not necessarily opposite day, but kind of crazy to think of this. The problems we're having right now are NIL related. It felt like it was Mike Gundy's reluctancy to get involved with the NIL that potentially put us in this position. And to some degree, that is very, very applicable. But it's one thing to have NIL. It's another thing to spend it appropriately. And we saw this at Texas A&M. And that's a perfect example. Under Jimbo Fisher, I know words are hard for me, they had all of the NIL money, right? They had everything they could physically possibly ask for and want for. And they were able to go get the 5 stars and the Alabama transfers and Florida State transfers kind of as they wanted to, because they financially had the ability to do whatever. We noticed that that was a disaster. Like, that was not very good at all for Texas A&M. And then they bring in Mike Elko. And Mike Elko, the first thing he does is talk about, this is A&M football. You are an Aggie. I don't want to hear about your collective. I don't want to hear about your NIL. I don't want to hear about how much you're getting. I only want to hear about what you're going to do today, every single day, to represent the Aggie name. We need that back again in Stillwater. That's just what it is. So do we need NIL? Absolutely. Do we need more donors and more people to collectively come up with more dollar bills? Yes, 100%. But this year it's a disaster. The coaching staff that we brought in, they're not worth a hill of beans. I mean, again, I believed in it, hook, line, and sinker. But it ain't working. And then offensively, I know Meacham and Gundy go way back, and I know the offensive line coaches and Gundy go way back. But that first drive, it looked like, okay, this is the Oklahoma State offense we're used to. The ball was getting out quick. We were spreading it all over to multiple wide receivers. We had good game plans in the backfield. We looked really good on that first drive. So as that first drive kind of started coming together, we all got that feeling, okay, goodness gracious, thank you. This is what we're supposed to look like. We're about to boat race Tulsa. Unfortunately, outside of the first drive, it was 3 quarters of ridiculousness. It was 3 quarters of banging our head into a brick wall and getting nowhere. So who came up with the script for the first 10, 12 plays? I don't know. Maybe it was Mike Gundy. And if it was Mike Gundy, we need more of that. Whatever that was, that worked. Why we abandoned that after one drive, that's the question. But now we find ourselves in a position where we need more NIL. We need more donors. We need more dollars. But we also need to get better at evaluation of talent. I don't know where the NIL collectives go from here. I don't know how it's going to be, easy to convince people to come spend more money when this is the product that we're getting. I understand that makes it difficult. But I also understand that this roster that we paid for is not very good. And then the ones that athletically are good enough, maybe they just don't put forth the same amount of effort. Maybe we're in a position where, as Mike Gundy mentioned earlier in the season, NIL kind of is their reasons for doing more or doing less. The motivational factors are different now. The motivational factors are more financial, which is fine as long as there's a scale that dictates, okay, you're going to get more or less. And as we've been told, most universities, including Oklahoma State, are going to have reassignment periods or reassessment periods throughout the course of the season. Well, we know at least one of those reassessment periods has supposedly already happened, but you're still seeing the same crap and more or less the same dudes doing the same stuff. And we're playing some guys that have no business out on the football field. And some of this, I caught some back flack or whatever you want to call it for, because I made a comment about Parker Robertson. And yeah, I was informed very quickly with some very choice verbiage that I was wrong about Parker. Maybe athletically he can't do some of the top safety in the country stuff, but he's on time to everything. He shows up early. He leaves late. He does extra film, does extra scholastics, stays extra to lift more and run more and work more. And we need more of that. That's how you rebuild a program. So stop playing the players that we know are problems, that we know aren't putting in 100%, and play those dudes. Play all of the Parker Robertsons. Because what are we looking at right now? We're looking at paying a bunch of transfers that came from some pretty nifty schools, Power 4, SEC, Big Ten schools, to do what? Win 2 games? So if we're going to win 2 or 3 games, why not do it with the dudes who actually give a crap about being here? This is, again, a call to Mike Gundy. Take your team back. Tell your coaches or whoever is dictating things, no. I'm Mike Gundy. If this is going to be how it goes, then we need to change some things up. We need to be willing to change some things up. We need to be willing to stop playing guys just because a certain position coach really wants them to be good, because he really put a lot on the line to bring him here. Eventually, you got to cut the crap and say, hey, I'm really glad you brought that dude from X, Y, or Z university, but it's not working out. Because that seems to be something that is not happening. We're allowing more complacency, which is precisely what happened last year. I thought a whole new staff would fix the complacency of last year, but it's kind of morphed into the same thing. Maybe it's less about complacency, more about politics, but it's the same crap. It's coaches making decisions on who should play and how things should go, even though it's not merit-based. Mike Gundy can take hold of that, or at least I hope that he can, because if he can, there's definitely still some dudes in that locker room that are ready to rally together and fight, scratch, claw, and bleed for another win. But there's also a decent number of dudes in the locker room that they don't give 13 craps whether we win another game or not, because they're going to get paid the same no matter what. They're going to keep buying jewelry. They're going to keep buying trucks, and we're going to keep losing mother trucking football games. Ladies and gentlemen, Prize Picks is who you need to get with for your daily fantasy. This episode is partially brought to you by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means you actually get some cash for it. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player projections. You can take turns and take real prizes into the bank in less than 60 seconds. It's quick, easy, and the best way for you to stay with a football team, follow along with a game. So make sure that you download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $50 off in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5. Give Prize Picks. It is your opportunity to play the game your way. Last but not least, it's FanDuel, the bee's knees for all of your betting needs. Ladies and gentlemen, the NFL season is officially here. FanDuel is going to make it better for you every single weekend with cannot miss offers. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet's a winner, you'll get $300 back in bonus bets to use all across the app. You're going to love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building same-game parlays, or jumping in as the live action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting because you're invested. Whether you're just watching your team or you're keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, get ready with FanDuel today. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Get with FanDuel today. All right, before we wrap this thing up here, it's kind of a segue into this last conversation about NIL, unfortunately, being terrible for Oklahoma State this year. So whether we spent $3 million, $7 million, $13 million, doesn't really matter. It isn't working. This particular roster that we pulled into Stillwater, Oklahoma, it's just not working. So again, as it sits right now, we've got some individual talent on the football field that maybe they're not doing the extra stuff. Maybe they're not going to the right hole repeatedly. Maybe they're choosing, instead of getting contained, maybe they're choosing to take a shorter angle so they can get to the quarterback as opposed to setting the edge. Maybe there's some things that schematically individual players are just not doing that will help the rest of the team. Because sure, individual stats are good. They're helpful. They're cool. And maybe individual stats are some of the metrics being utilized in the reassessment periods for more or less NIL. To me, this season's kind of a wash, right? It doesn't look like we have enough talent to make a run. It doesn't look like we've got enough ability to scheme our way into W's. So if this is the lay of the land, and we know that it probably will get worse if we fire Gundy midseason, then not only should we just let it ride the way it is, at least towards the latter half of the season, but secondarily, if Mike Gundy knows that there's a ton of pressure externally, and he knows that there's some people in his staff that aren't exactly conducting the way things have always been done for Mike Gundy, then I would like to see him grab the bull by the horns, right? As Ricky Bobby would say, or Ricky Bobby's dad, get your balls back, Ricky Bobby. That's what Mike Gundy needs to do. Take control of this team. If you need to be involved in the offense, do it. If you need to tell defensive coaches to get the flip out of here, then do it. I want to see Mike Gundy take control of this football team, take control of this roster, take control of this depth chart, and go out his way. Go out his way with his guys. Because it doesn't look great. So if we're going to lose 8 games, 9 games, whatever the number is, I would rather do it with guys that I know give a crap. Give me a field full of Parker Robertsons, a field full of them. And take out the players that may be more talented, that may have been a consensus 4-star. But if they're on the sidelines talking crap about Zane Flores so much that fans can hear it, get them gone. They shouldn't play anymore. Point blank, period. If there's players in the locker room talking about what they're going to buy after the game or on Saturday or Sunday or whatever, they shouldn't be playing. So identify the cancerous issues, because it's still somewhat early in the season. You can still galvanize, because there are players that are rocking for Gundy saying, this ain't on him. Holistically, collectively, from 2022 to now, sure, yes. But the particulars of why we suck right now, if several players are saying it's not because of Gundy, unfortunately, I got to roll with that. I got to rock with it. And I got to say, if that's the case, Mike Gundy, take control of this team. Tell your coaches to cut the shit. Tell other people that aren't even coaches that are making decisions to get the flip out of your way. It's your team. Go out your way with your guys. All right, y'all. So we're going to have this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen. Hit the like button if you liked it. My podcast people out there, you know what to do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. Later, taters.